Welcome to Reclassified. This is Estonia, the country with the hottest... Oh, sorry, wrong script. This is the United States, the country with the most progressive tax system in the developed world. A shocker for most people. But let's take a step back. Has anyone ever wondered how the country with the most expensive military, healthcare, and one of the most expensive education systems conversely has a lower average tax wedge than all of its peers? When the OECD report was first released into the mainstream, the main counter was that it wasn't wrong, just that it ignored post-tax redistribution. The criticism has its own value in another discussion on whether the government taking $4,000 and giving you back $6,000 is more preferred than the Fed just giving you $1,500. By and large, most Americans choose option 2. The second criticism was corporate taxes. Since 2010, the U.S. has moved from having the highest corporate tax in the OECD, down to the middle, and then back to the top, rendering that move inconsequential since many U.S. conglomerates still prefer EU countries for their lower corporate tax rates. Third issue was the data omitted a lot of regressive taxes at the state level. That still doesn't change that the U.S. ranks dead last again, on the range of costs tacked on to consumers at the end. It has no VAT, the only developed economy without one. The average sales tax again puts it at the end of the OECD. Also, majority of states have progressive income taxes, 9 have no income tax and the rest, a flat tax. A lot of misconceptions of the tax system come from Americans' rather understandable distaste of high taxation and flat-out incorrect claims from prominent pundits and publications, some of which have been pushed to the mainstream with zero technical backing. Another bombastic fact about the American tax system is that majority of Americans will never pay taxes their whole life. In other words, the state will spend more in public services and transfers than most people will pay in taxes throughout their lifetime. For every $1 in taxes paid, the bottom quintile receives almost $6 back in transfers. For every dollar in taxes paid, the top quintile receive roughly 10 cents. This also applies to most countries to varying degrees. Back to the progressivity. Let's take two people in for an oversimplified basic rundown. This is Jaylene and Carl. Both of them live in St. Average, somewhere in the middle of Cali and Florida. Jaylene comes from a low-income family, while Carl comes from an upper-middle-class family. We will ignore all other services and just take a look at their education costs to simplify the math. Average education cost per capita for K through 12 was $15,500 in 2022. We will average it down to $13,000 as the cost has been rising over the past 2 decades, indexed to inflation. Carl later goes to a private university paid by his parents, while Jaylene gets a full-ride government scholarship to an average public and state college, 22 years after they were born. A surprise contender, Sharon was bought by someone living in St. Average. The state sales tax is roughly 5% plus 1% for local taxes to a rough 6%. Sharon was worth $3.6 million when announced, and somehow arrived at that price. With that singular purchase, the taxes have covered every single cost incurred by the state for the education of Jaylene. Carl will have to pay this much in total taxes before he gets back to, even while Jaylene will have to pay this to get back to zero. That is education alone. We have ignored all other public costs incurred. The car's upkeep will keep it in the green in terms of taxes paid as yearly insurance, monthly costs and maintenance, including service parts and labor, all of which are more expensive than the average consumption of Jaylene. Away from the basic math, let's get back to the full picture. This is the usually cited U.S. expenditure, but in reality, it only encompasses federal taxes. State and local taxes add up an almost equal level of that to the total U.S. budget once we eliminate intergovernmental transfers to the state level. Our main goal, though, is the revenue source. Income taxes make the largest share of federal taxes, sales and income taxes make the 2 largest sources, for state taxes and property taxes make the largest source at the local level. Yes, government transfers are ignored in that statement, as it's already factored in the previous level. And due to that simple transfer from the federal level, majority of Americans have a 0% federal effective tax rate. In other words, these cohort gets more in transfers than it pays in taxes. That income cutoff point reached so high during COVID that it encompassed everyone making $75,000 and below. On a normal year, Income taxes and payroll taxes make up 80% to 90% of total revenue. Payroll taxes are split roughly half and half between the employer and the employee. Majority of the funds go to Medicare and Social Security. In income taxes, the bottom 50% cumulatively earned 10.9% of total income, but paid only 2.3% of total taxes in 2020. The top 1% earned 22.2% of total income and paid 42.3% in the same year. As in the case of Sharon and St. Average, majority of Americans live in progressively taxed states. On top of that, sales and property taxes are primarily a contribution of high-value property and luxury goods. This difference is so stark, there are states where roughly 10 or so zip codes contribute majority of income and property taxes. In fact, the lopsidedness is heavy to the point that one individual temporarily leaving the state affects their budget due to the large shortfall in government revenue. This is one of the current panics as New York and California are having net losses of this cohort of high-paying individuals. Although it would be a long, protracted process, as key industries such as Wall Street and Silicon Valley remain pivotal. Given a long enough time period, any other state or country that manages to capture this group and any illusion about how much people pay in taxes in those already highly taxed states will be dissolved. See you next chapter.